We're going to turn now to the COVID-19 crisis in this country. Today, the federal government responded to urgent pleas from the small business community. Have a listen.
If you've had to close up shop because of public health recommendations, if you don't have a lot of money coming in because people aren't spending as much these days, you may be worried about losing your office space or not having a coffee shop to reopen after this crisis. So last week, we said that we're planning on introducing the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance. And today, I can announce that we've reached agreements with all provinces and territories to lower rent by 75% for small businesses that have been strongly affected by COVID-19 for April, May, and June.
So who is eligible for the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program? If you're a business that pays less than $50,000 a month in rent and have suffered a drop in revenues of at least 70%, here's how it will work. A loan will be given to landlords that covers 50% of the rent, and that loan is forgivable if they agree to drop rent for their small business tenant by 75%. The tenant covers the remaining 25%. But why doesn't this cover more businesses, like the ones that have lost 40, 50, or 60% of their revenue? Or will it continue beyond the month of June? Right now, this covers April, May, and June. Bill Morneau is the Minister of Finance, and he joins us from Toronto. Hi, Minister Morneau. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Minister, you said a little bit earlier today that this program likely won't be available until the middle of May, but it does only apply to rent in April, May, and June. Business owners we've spoken to barely made April rent. They're very worried about making May rent. How certain are you this relief will actually do what you want it to?
Well, first of all, although the actual program will be getting up and going in mid-May, it will apply for April, May, and June. So what we're hoping is that the tenant and the landlord will begin that work now. And what it does is it gives people a bridge. So we don't know, Vashi, in what situation we'll be in after that time period. But for now, April, May, and June, these are the times where for businesses that are really out of business in so many ways, retailers or barber shops or hair salons, it gives them the ability to bridge that time, only paying 25% of their rent, and doing that in concert with the other things that we've done, it allows them to have confidence they'll be able to come out after this crisis.
What happens if they can't even make the 25% rent? And that is a situation, again, we hear from a number of business owners who have zero revenue right now. They likely will not be able to even make that 25% of their normal rent. What happens then?
Well, it's important to remember all the things we've done. First of all, for businesses, there's the wage subsidy, so that's helping them to support their employees. For those businesses that actually let people go, they have the emergency response benefit, so that's important. They also, for the small businesses, we put in place the emergency business account, so a $40,000 interest-free loan, and if they pay it back before the end of 2022, they get a 25% forgivable portion, so $10,000 back. So that's going to allow them to bridge this time, and then of course this rent agreement will ensure that those rental charges are not so high for them. So we think this is a very good solution. It provides the landlord with the ability to ride out this time, and importantly for those small businesses, it gives them confidence that they can get through it.
I know for a number of Canadians and Canadian business owners have been able to access that emergency loan that you referred to, Minister, but I also know of many who haven't because, for example, they don't draw a salary for themselves or they're sole proprietor. What do they do?
We've obviously tried to do a number of things. The emergency response benefit is quite critical, I know, for some of the smallest of self-employed entrepreneurs. That's going to be critically important. We think that this rent benefit will also be important. It's a strong incentive for the landlord, obviously, to guarantee 75% of the rent payment and a very significant discount. So, you know, a week ago, people were worried that they were going to have to somehow pay up to 100% of their rent. Now what we're saying is, no, look, there's an arrangement that you'll only have to pay 25% of April, May, and June. We know that there's a challenge out there for so many people, for so many small businesses, and we think this gives them a bridge, gives them more confidence. I'm not saying that there aren't continuing challenges. There are, but this we know it goes a long way to help, and we've done it in concert with the provinces, which we think was the right way for the federal government to be of significant support.
What is the breakdown between the provinces and the federal government of who pays for what in this?
The agreement is that the federal government would pay 75% of the amount. So we just immediately came to the provinces and said, we know it's a provincial jurisdiction. We also now know how significantly challenging this is for small businesses. So we put this in place, said we'll pay 75% of it, and all of the provinces and territories have come on board. We all recognize together that we need to have an economy when we come out of this. We need to support people. We need to keep them connected to their businesses. We need those businesses to have the optimism they can get through this. And we think the combination of the small business loan and the rent relief and the support for people gives us, a sense of the possibility of getting through this. It's also, when we look at what's happening in other countries, we're clearly taking an approach that is very, very significant. Of the countries we've looked at, we've got among the most generous approaches, and our reason for that is we think making the investments now is what makes it better for us in the future when we get out of this crisis.
You've characterized much of what you've announced today and other emergency aid packages as bridges, right? Bridges to get us through this part. In specific reference to the rent program that you announced today, if it is just for April, May, and June, what happens in July if emergency orders as they stand right now are still in place? If by the order of the constituency or the jurisdiction these businesses are in, they still have to remain closed? Will this program extend beyond June rent if that is the case?
It's the question that many people are asking, Vashi. We all wish we knew where we're going to be in 3 months. The answer is we don't know. So we're taking the decisions today that we know we can take with the information that we have. We think a program that's for April, May, and June is appropriate based on the information we have. Of course, we're going to need to constantly look at the things we've done for supporting people, for supporting businesses. We want to have an economy when we get out of this. We need people to have the capacity to continue to buy groceries to support their families. We need businesses to continue to be able to start back up when we get out of this. So as we have more information, we'll consider that information. You've seen us all the way through. We've said we want to get these programs out as rapidly as we can. We have taken a look at the things that we've put out in order to make sure that they're appropriate and that we haven't missed anything, and we've been willing to change and adapt. That will continue to be our stance. We're going to support people, we're going to support businesses, and we're going to do it in a way that gives us the best opportunity coming out of this.
I take your point, Minister, and I know that you don't have a crystal ball. I'll tell you why I'm asking. We have heard from a number of businesses, which are business owners, who are concerned that even when the economy so-called reopens, it's not like you can just turn a key and everyone will come back to the restaurant, right? Physical distancing measures, we know, the Prime Minister has been explicit, will be in effect to some degree or another right until there's a vaccine. So we're talking at least a year out. Right now, you have provided assurances for the next 2 months to business owners that they will at least have the possibility of their rent being subsidized. But there are no specific assurances beyond that. And I'm not asking you to look into a crystal ball, but we know there will be limits to what businesses can do for the foreseeable future. Will your government be there for them with financial relief beyond June 1st?
What we've said from day one is that we'll do whatever it takes to get us through this. And that means we need to think about how we best address the challenges we're facing at each time during this crisis. So I can't predict, and no one can, where we'll be in a few months. I can say for sure that we are in an extreme challenge right now where many, many businesses, as you know, are just closed down. Retail shops, restaurants, bars, hair salons, gyms. So we're providing that bridge support. And Vashi will just have to do the continuing work to look at the next iteration of our support as we move forward. So I don't have those answers. I know people would like us to have those answers. We will have them as we have more information.
Before I let you go, Minister, just a question on the qualifications. So it's my understanding that businesses have to be paying at this point, and I know you have more coming later, but at this point, a small business or medium-sized business has to be paying less than $50,000 a month in rent and have to show a 70% decline in revenue. The CFIB, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, says that 60% of their members won't qualify based on that revenue requirement. Putting it another way, why are you expecting a business that, for example, sees their revenue slashed in half to pay their full rent?
Well, I think the reason is pretty clear when you look at the full suite of what we've done. We've said that for the biggest cost for most businesses, which is the paying their employees, that we're putting in place a wage subsidy of 75%. So we're taking away the biggest cost for most small businesses with their employees, and we're saying, really this is intended for anybody who's had 70% revenue decline or more. So if they've had some revenue, then our sense is that the ability to use that emergency business account and the revenues that are coming in will help them to get through this time. But for all those businesses that are closed, that really have no revenue and no way of getting through this, we're trying to make sure that we give them a bridge to the future. So we have to look at these things together. It's the emergency response benefit, it's the wage subsidy, which is supporting people, it's the business account, it's the credit for larger businesses, and importantly, it's this rent. And it's rent from $0 up to $50,000 a month, which, as you know, covers the lion's share of small and even medium-sized businesses. And we think that that's critically important to get us through this.
But for a restaurant, for example, that has had to close down but open up just enough to do takeout, just enough to get by, and maybe it's just the chef and the owner of the restaurant working right now. If they're making 31% of what they used to, then they won't qualify for this. Why not just encompass, like you have with other programs, as much as possible of people who need help? If you've lost half of what you make, or 2/3 of what you make, shouldn't that be enough to get some assistance with your rent?
Well, again, we're recognizing that for most businesses that the big cost has been people, which we've already taken care of, and rent. As we look at it, this is around from our standpoint, the appropriate amount of revenue decline. It's consistent with what's been done in other countries. France took the same approach. We think that this is the right way to think about it. So for businesses that are substantially closed down, they need this rent support. And what we're saying to the landlords is, we need you to take a discount, but we're supporting you for 75%. So there's an important element for the landlords here, and for the tenant, we're saying, you're getting a 75% discount because your business is so dramatically impacted by COVID-19. So Vashi, looking at this in total, we think it's the right way to deal with these challenges. There are inevitably going to be issues that businesses are going to face. We're going to continue to think about how we can be supportive. We think this is a very important step forward for so many businesses that are struggling to think about what they're going to do on May 1st and June 1st, and still worried about how they're going to support what they already did in April 1st. This, with that loan, we think will make a big difference.
All right, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Minister Morneau. Appreciate your time.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.